Hello everybody, and here we go through our multi-part stress lecture. And obviously when we talk, successful adjustment, stress is one of the primary interferences in that. So I think stress, putting it up front makes sense, and I also think spending some time with it in different aspects of stress make some pretty good sense. So Cerebellum's going to lead us into the lecture there. There she is posing for us. Let's talk about the emotions of stress and challenge, right? And one of the first questions we might ask then is, how much control do we have over our emotions? And our emotional responses are not always consciously regulated. So sometimes they just kind of occur, and that's one of the things of emotions. Sometimes they seem to erupt out of nowhere, right? Or some deep place. And if you want to explore that more, we can do so in psychology of emotion. But the bottom line is we can learn to control our emotional responding to a certain extent. Some of us are already pretty adept at it. Others, okay. Some people really struggle with this idea. But there's benefits to be accrued in taking charge of this, being mindful of what causes our emotions, and also mindful of the consequences of our emotions. This is a pretty simple state. Animals, cats, I observe a lot of feline behavior, no duh, right? And in fact, Boots is telling Alice to get the hell out of there, or at least not come any closer, and Alice has developed a submissive posture and she's going to move away, right? I don't think Alice is experiencing fear at this point, and and I don't think Boots' hostility is over the top, right? But let's just operate from the premise that we can kind of select our emotions, and what we do, our behaviors have an impact on other people's emotions. So this assignment was originally developed by Dr. Carolyn Kaufman, to whom this course is dedicated. Dr. Heather Johnson spent a lot of time helping Carolyn modify it. They were very good friends. And most of us at Columbus State in Psych 1100 would offer the kindness experience as an assignment. We all loved it that much. I actually did it in Psych of Adjustment last year and got pretty favorable reports from the students. So let's talk about it. Not everyone is going to love this assignment. I understand that. And a lot of this class is understanding who we are, becoming increasingly who we are, and becoming more authentic, if you will. But let's give this a try. Now, let me jump to the second paragraph first, and then I'm going to go back to that first paragraph. The assignment, in its original intent, is to spend at least one day, whole day, pre-selected day. So you say, hey, on Wednesday I'm going to, and then you wake up on Wednesday and you get busy with it, right? Spend at least one whole day going out of your way to consciously treat other people as well as you possibly can, right? Assume that everyone has a reason for the things they do, even if they're rude to you or cut you off in traffic or whatever. Try to explain it, right, as a situational artifact. This was caused by the situation they were in. This is not that they're assholes, right? And what am I talking here? I'm kind of talking the fundamental attribution error. Remember that from Psych 1100 or your social psych class? That we tend to use dispositional explanations, oh, what a butthead, rather than situational explanations, oh my God, what a horrible day they're having, and that's why they're responding that way. One thing that makes being kind to others and moving through this assignment easier is to allow for situational explanations to dominate, right? So that might help. Now, some examples, for example, one thing that's common that students might do is they will make breakfast for their partner unannounced. So they'll just get up and make breakfast, and their partner will be surprised and say, oh, how kind, how nice of you, right? And then you can see, what did you do? How did the person respond, right? And then comment on that. The more guidelines for the assignment. Now we got a wrinkle. We got COVID, and many of us are kind of housebound, etc. So, but we can adapt to this. I think this will work just as well. So if during our current COVID situation it's difficult to follow the instructions in any way below, then do the kindness experience virtually, right? Shift your kindness, reaching out via email, phone, text, whatever it is. Make at least 5 contacts. All right, so there's sufficient observations, and use those interactions as the basis to answer the questions in the prompt. So whether you're going to do it in person, whether you're going to do it virtually, I don't think that's going to make a difference. The idea is to go the hell out of your way being kind to others, right? Okay. Now, if you're already a kind person, you say, well, I already do that. Now you're just going to then attune your observation process to the reactions, right? If you have problems being kind, try it. It's only a day, right? It's probably not going to kill us. And it's easier for some people than others. I will admit, I read one paper where the student, was a frequent bicycle rider on campus, and they were commenting in the paper, which was, about how stupid people are, and they step out in front of bicyclists, and how hard it is to ride a bicycle, and they usually just yell at people to get the hell out of the way. And they say, for the kindness experience day, I did not yell at anyone for getting in my way. And I thought, well, okay. To that person, that probably is being kind, but to some of the rest of us, that might be, well, you're just inhibiting bad behavior. You really haven't crossed the threshold into proactively demonstrating kind behavior. But look, we all differ, right? And that's kind of the beauty in us, is we all differ, so we're going to do it in our own way, right? So, and that did not detract from her score on the assignment. She made her observations very clearly, right? So, now, here's the assignment then. What did you learn about how your expectations affect others' behaviors, right? And this can be discussed in terms of the self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. That is, I act in a way assuming certain things about people, and that it elicits a confirmatory response from that person. So start looking at how your behavior impacts the responses of others. Did any people respond differently to you than they normally do? So if you're interacting with people who know you have a history of interactions, do you notice a change, right? Did anything surprising happen? So watch throughout the day and say, oh wow, I was surprised by this. I'm trying something new, right? Or I'm paying attention in a way I've never paid before, and look what happened. Will this affect how you behave in the future? And can you improve upon your approach? So for some of us, if we go and we act kind, we might find it's a little awkward because it wasn't necessarily natural. It can become more habitual over time. How might you make that happen, right? Will you choose to be more kind in the future or not? And again, explain. Did you enjoy it? Did you find it difficult? Did you find it thought-provoking, etc.? Ultimately, as I kind of, build this class, it's the story of you, and these questions are about you and your response and learning about yourself, having tried out this process, right? And what about you helps explain this. So now take a look at yourself and explain the what so, the why for behind your reactions, behind your conclusions in this. And that's it. Okay, so that's the paper. You can check for further assignment guidelines like due dates, whatever, in Carmen, and you'll find those there. And I hope you have a good time with this. Just be diligent, be mindful, and report carefully your observations. Okay. But notice, this is about taking control of one's emotions. I might not feel like being kind, but I'm going to do it in spite of what I feel. To what extent can you control your emotions? And let's talk then about emotional intelligence. And if you're journaling, right, we talked about this. These can all be practiced, right? The components of emotional intelligence, and people differ on this, so there's different perspectives. Emotional intelligence is a very popular idea now. Solovey and Meyer did the empirical work. Daniel Goleman has done tremendous work in this, and his book on emotional intelligence I highly recommend. So, emotional intelligence talks about self-awareness. To what extent am I aware of my emotional states, right? And then let's spin around in a counterclockwise. To what, how am I able to regulate those emotions? So what is my powers of self-regulation? Am I feeling angry, but can I hide it? Can I not act on it? Empathy. To what extent can I really feel what another person is feeling? That is, empathize with their situation. Sympathize is to know what they're feeling. Empathize is to take it a step further and bring it into your core to feel it for yourself. Can you develop the social skills that then affect other people's emotional displays? Can you take responsibility for other people's emotional responses? Some of us say, I just put it out there, and how people respond is up to them. And it's like, actually, I consider how someone might respond to something I say, and then I try to say it in a way that, kind of regulates the response. And I know that might sound manipulative, and struggle with that as you will, but sometimes if I have to say something and I can say it in a way that pisses someone off, or I can say it in a way that someone says, wow, I want to thank you for pointing that out, that's emotionally intelligent, the latter choice, right? And then the motivation to do so, and the belief in the importance. The motivation is the one that's a little iffy in some other people's conceptualization of motivational intelligence. So you can ask yourself these questions. What can you do to practice self-regulation if you want to journal these? How can you become more self-aware, right? What social skills are your strength? Get in touch with those, right? What social skills could use some practice development? How might you go about that, right? And as to motivation, what are 3 reasons to do any of the above? And I can supply a simple motivation, and I know it's a kumbaya kind of thing, but to the extent that we make each other feel better about ourselves, we will be living in a better world. So to what extent do you want to be part of that, right? Or to what extent does that not interest you whatsoever? If that's the case, I'm sorry. So, developing emotional intelligence, understand, control emotional responses in ourselves and others, right? And I love this quote attributed to Buddha: holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Anger is a very self-destructive emotion, right? Now, that's not to say anger isn't useful in certain instances as well. But again, we want to get deeper into this. I'd love to see you in Psych of Emotion, which is offered actually twice a year, both semesters. Okay? Emotional control can be achieved by learning, if we're motivated to do so, right? And emotion detection can be improved through learning as well. So Daniel Goleman then gives us, and he's got a lot of different books, right? Emotional Intelligence in the Workplace, Altered Traits, etc. But the original Emotional Intelligence is awesome. Got to enjoy it. So there's personal competence. To what extent are you aware of your emotional state? And what theories, naive theories, do you operate about what that emotional state means? So to what extent are you personally aware and understand how it affects your interactions, right? Now, self-management. How skilled are you in managing the expression of your emotions, right? Controlling reactions and the display of the reactions. So this is not only the outward expression, but it's also the body language and the facial expressions that are involved. It appears that Montana has got a ball. She loves to carry the ball up the stairs. Now she will push the ball down the stairs, chase the ball, bring it back up, and so forth. So if you hear that meowing, that is Montana getting busy there. Social competence then, other awareness, empathy versus knowing, empathy versus sympathy, if you will. To what extent can you increase your ability to be aware of another person's emotional state? And one of the easiest ways to do this is talk to them, to ask them, right? And to observe. Also become a good observer of body language and facial expressions. And then relationship management, and this is the part I was talking about as being perhaps manipulative, that is taking responsibility for the emotional state in others. So if I come home and I'm really having a bad day and I feel like punching a wall when I get home, do I want to infect the household, all the people in the household, with my bad mood? Or can I find some way to kind of bite back on that bad mood or move through it or dissipate it before I get home, so I'm not spreading that nastiness and ruining other people's evenings, so to speak? And see where motivation comes in. I have to be motivated to care to do that and to want to do that, right? So again, a lot of this comes from a point of choice. Often we think emotion just wells up and that's the end of the story. No, there's a huge amount of control available to us. So emotion training, though those are good at regulating negative emotion, inferred by their ability to voluntarily use cognitive strategies to reappraise a stimulus. Man, I can't believe she said that to me. That was really rude, you know. Screw her, I'm not going to talk to her the rest of the day. Or we could say, wow, that was really rude. And I'm not sure that she actually meant that. Maybe she was having a bad day, right? And maybe I should just let that one go, right? Rather than hold her feet to the fire over that one, right? I'm describing a reappraisal process. I'm reappraising. Show reductions in activation in the amygdala. So the fascinating thing here is if we cognitively reappraise, cognitively restructure, however you want to put that, we can actually reduce biochemical reactions that are connected to the emotion. Right? And such regulation probably results from something that's been at least implicitly trained over the lifetime. So depending on your parents and depending on the examples you grew up with, some of you probably developed the skill without knowing it, right? Or learned that you had developed the skill through your interactions. Others are completely oblivious, right? The implication, though, is that anyone can learn and somehow train themselves to modulate their emotions and better able to manage stress, because these negative emotions often facilitate the stress response or maintain the sense of stress, right? So we can bounce back from adversity. We can become more resilient. And there's a good term to think about that we've used before. Also, they can register the negative. They have somehow learned not to get bogged down in it, aka emotional hijacking. And to what extent are other people able to toss some venom at you, their venom, and then change your emotional state? And it's like, you know what? I need a venom shield here, man. I want to put my venom shield. You toss your venom at me, bam, it bounces off, and it doesn't affect me. And again, it's about controlling one's reactions, and often it might be controlling the people with whom you interact, perhaps, and the situations in which you engage. Right? So taking care of yourself by promoting your own happiness, right? Your happiness is just as important as anyone else's. Let me repeat that. Your happiness is just as important as anyone else's. You can be a role model to others so they can watch you and see you care for yourself, and they're going to learn to do the same. But it's hard to be the trendsetter. It's hard to be the leader. It's hard to be out front, right? And you have to lead from in front. You can't lead from behind. So you got to stand up. You got to make the choice to do this, and you got to commit to doing it, right? Okay, you got to commit to accepting the challenge that you can control your emotion. And this is sounding a little bit like hardiness as it would be applied to emotion, hardiness in a more narrow fashion. But notice most of the concepts that we talk about in this class dovetail together extremely well. Okay, so you need to put limits on your demands in order to care for yourself. And in fact, this is Aaron, many of my clients will say that this is selfish, but it's more selfish about self-preservation. What value can you be to people if you've been used up and you got nothing left, right? How can we care for others, contribute to the priorities in our life if we don't care for ourselves first? So that's not being selfish. In fact, it's almost being selfless, because I'm taking care of myself so I have more to offer and to give to you. Right. So, and you can see Psych Central blog there. I don't know if any of you have ever been at psychcentral.com. You might want to check it out. There's a lot of good information there from a lot of interesting bloggers, etc. So, 8 tips then to control your emotion. Take 30 belly breaths. Breathing is the royal road often for many of us to emotional control, right? So you take those deep breaths, you get it way down in the abdomen, take it deep, exhale slowly if you want to, inhale through your mouth, exhale through your nose to control the flow, right? Get good knowledge. Understand what's going on around you. Understand the possible causes for people behavior and how you might react, right? Your knowledge about your being in the world, that's the end, right? And your being with others. Redirect your mind. You can cognitively reappraise. You can take a different point of view. That's available to us. Don't forget to eat. One of my least favorite words in describing emotion, but one that's so accurate, is hangry, hunger and angry, right? I don't like it, but it's very true. I don't know why it bothers me. Ask yourself, is it useful? Here I'm about to go off with some invective on someone, that's anger related. Is it useful? And you say, well, if I just let go of my anger, it's going to make me feel better. I offer you the opposite consequence. You loose your anger on people, it's going to make you feel worse, right? So, observe the feeling, be with the feeling, be mindful of the feeling. Look at yourself as an object of analysis and say, wow, this is what happens, and this is how I respond, and this is how the ultimate consequence, right? So, stay in the present. Try not to dwell on the past, right? Let the past go to the extent that you can. but then don't leave yourself vulnerable to people who might manipulate or use you, right? And find good ways to relax, successful ways to relax. And then I'm going to toss this at you. This is my dissertation research area, and it came from a whole other area, but non-conscious emotions. I'm convinced that we have two levels of emotional experience. We have emotions we're conscious of, and then we have non-conscious emotions. I wasn't able to successfully get enough evidence in the laboratory after 2.5 years of dissertation research to make a case for this. I mean, the dissertation was fine. It was well done. That's not an issue. I didn't publish anything out of it because there just wasn't results that were solid enough, right? But I believe there's non-conscious emotions, and to the extent that we can bring those up into consciousness or understand how they might be instigated, we're probably going to be better off. So are there non-conscious emotion? Is there non-conscious emotional experience? People argue about that. I believe there is. I have minor evidence for it. Other people say there isn't, and good for them too, right? But if there was, how might it affect us? And I think about that quite often. For example, is it possible that emotional experience can be repressed and then affect our responses to other situations? And we know what Sigmund Freud would say about that. He would call that displacement, so that's already a named defense mechanism. And we'll talk about all Freud's defense mechanisms later in the course. But the question is, if so, what can we do about it? And I think it's the mindfulness, right? And to the extent that we can become more mindful and function less on autopilot, as Langer would suggest, then we're going to gain, I think, more emotional awareness, and if we are so motivated, more emotional control, right? So, Desi and Rosie hashing it out there, having a good time. And once they were done, Desi thought it had a good time to relax. He likes to air himself out like that. And it's kind of an amazing pose. But so there's Desi. And if you're wondering, yeah, we have another cat named Lucy. Yeah, I know. They're not related in any way, but it's probably good because I don't think the original Desi and Lucy were related either way. Probably shouldn't have been. End of this one. So, that's about all I got to say today, guys. So you take care and mind your emotions to the extent you're motivated to do so.